Hello, and thank you for joining our third annual Day with DISA. Before the session gets started, let's go over a few things. A copy of the presentation will be available to download once the session has ended under the Materials section. If you have questions about the information in this session, enter them in the Q&A section below, and the speaker will answer them once the session has ended. If we don't get to your question, we'll reach out to you at the end of the conference. If you have questions about the topics or trends that are mentioned throughout Day with DISA and how they pertain to your company, and you'd like to reach out to one of our team members directly, hit the chat icon at the bottom of daywithdisa.com and you'll be connected directly with one of our team members. Thank you for attending live. Each of our live attendees is eligible for our prize drawing at the end of the conference. And each session that you attend live increases your chances of winning either a Nintendo bundle or a brand new iPhone 12. Finally, I'd like to take this time to thank all of our sponsors for their participation in Day with DISA. Specifically, I'd like to call out CRL, our title sponsor for 3 years running. We'd like to thank our platinum sponsors, OraSure, Quest Diagnostics, Samba Safety, and Psychomedics. All of our sponsors' support is greatly appreciated. With that, let's get started. Enjoy your session.
Welcome to Day with DISA's 2020 Owner-Operator Survey and Solutions. My name is Colin Woods, and I'm the General Manager for DISA Global Solutions. I'm responsible for sales and marketing, client services, and operations running through the DISA Works platform. I've been fortunate enough to work for DISA since 2002, and I've seen the company grow and evolve based on industry changes, as well as client feedback and owner-operator needs. Today, we're going to focus on a few key topics. The DISA's annual owner survey. We've been conducting this for a few years now, getting peer feedback and best practices and trends in the industry. DISA Contractor Consortium Overview, DISA Compliance Monitoring, COVID positivity rates, and upcoming technologies. Let's start off with the DISA 2020 Owner Survey. The survey goal is to identify unbiased best practices throughout safety-sensitive industries relating to employee screening and management. The survey is focused on those best practices and trends for drug testing, background screening, and badging and portal processes, essentially site access. And this full report is located at disa.com/owner2020. The survey methodology, we've focused on 120 different owner-operators in the oil and gas, chemical, and energy markets. The incentive for the owners to participate was to get a high-level report back that compares their facility best practices within the industry. The owner survey results are confidential and are not shared, except when included in high-level analysis like this report. 70+% of owners that participated are using DISA Global Solutions in some capacity for drug testing, and we're always looking for more owners to add to this survey. And again, those owners will receive a comprehensive report that focuses on their answers compared to the industry. Now, I mentioned that there is a full report available at disa.com. I'd like to talk about 11 key takeaways specific to this owner survey. First one is, there's a noticeable shift towards multiple testing methodologies to eliminate gaps in drug testing coverage. Essentially, every drug testing methodology has pros and cons. When you start to combine multiple methodologies, you begin to eliminate the cons and capture just the pros. As an example, 40% of owners that completed this survey are using multiple testing methodologies. 10% of those surveyed wanted to add an additional testing methodology into their program. As an example, and most often, we are seeing owners combine near-term detection windows with expanded drug panels, along with a longer-term detection window. Urinalysis with the near-term and expanded panel, combined with hair testing, which is a longer detection window, eliminates a lot of gaps and focuses on that risk mitigation, creating a safer and more secure workplace. The second key takeaway was communication to employees needs improvement. 70% of owners surveyed aren't using medical acknowledgement forms. If you're not familiar with those, this is essentially a medical disclosure policy that identifies potential impairment risk. So as an example, a worker may be using prescription drugs legitimately prescribed by a doctor. However, the side effects of those drugs could cause drowsiness or some other form of impairment. With regards to these medical acknowledgement forms, this helps employers, employees, and owners all work together to identify potential impairment risks, and again, keep that employee and that workplace safe. 42% of owners surveyed aren't communicating marijuana-related information at all. And again, it seems like half the phone calls we receive here at DISA are focused on marijuana, the legalization of marijuana and the ever-changing laws. And so the fact that over 40% aren't talking about it definitely presents risk. The concern for legal marijuana and opioids are still low at 40%. So we've all heard of the opioid epidemic, but the vast majority of owners aren't talking about these issues, and they're not concerned about them, or at least via the survey results. And then the legalization of marijuana, I'm sitting here in the state of Texas where, it has not been legalized recreationally or for medical use. However, we do have traveling workforces with our contractor community going from state to state to state, and those laws do change. And so it's imperative to make sure that the employees have that awareness, the policies are clearly stated and communicated to ultimately allow everyone to do the right thing. Another key takeaway that came up was the lack of quality labor, prescription abuse, drug and alcohol abuse are the top increasing trends from the owner perspective. In fact, 3 of the 5 top concerns from an owner perspective had to do with drug and alcohol related issues. Number 5, 68% of owners mandate a single provider for drug testing. This is focused on getting that consolidated view. Mandating a single provider allows for standardized requirements, real-time tracking, and ease of administration and increased safety. Most owners share contractor compliance information with peers. Compliance information is predominantly shared through DISA, and 77% of the time, contractor screening is standardized across all sites within an owner's network. So as an example, if you're an owner that has 6 sites across the country, more often than not, you are standardizing your requirements from site to site to site for consistency. 71% of owners saw a reduction in safety-related incidents upon implementing a drug and alcohol program. In addition, 41% of owners saw a further reduction in safety-related incidents upon implementing a drug testing consortium. So implementing the program requiring effective testing is critical. Taking one step further and implementing a tracking mechanism to validate compliance with those programs continues to lead to that safer and more secure work environment. Key takeaway number 8, 79% of owners integrate with portal companies. 81% of owners integrate with a batching company. Just as an example, 86% use ISNetworld for a portal company, and 41% use Linnell for badging. Portal companies are designed to collect various bits of data from providers like DISA. And what this allows is a one-stop shop for that owner to identify all of their compliance needs and potentially their compliance gaps within their contractor community. Badging systems are predominantly used downstream at refineries, chemical facilities, and petrochem facilities. But we've also seen a number of technological advancements with regards to midstream and upstream operations, especially as it relates to offshore workers. Key takeaway number 9, 69% of sites offer temporary passes in a pinch, but more than half are restricted. Owners are putting rules in place for very specific reasons, and they don't want to create exceptions to these rules. Most of the owners surveyed said that site leaders are the only ones that can approve exceptions. Item 10, POCT, or point of collection testing, offer quicker access, but risk false positives and increased costs. 38% of owners use POCT, but most are sent to be lab certified regardless. A third of owners that use point of collection have seen false positives. So again, the risk here is this is a device that will offer some convenience in the event of an exception situation where you have to get somebody on site. However, the laboratory certified process will be the best way to determine whether or not an individual is in compliance with your drug and alcohol testing standards. And then finally, key takeaway 11, most owners are implementing background screening in addition to their various drug testing requirements. The majority of owners require background checks that are renewed every other year and require a cut score of 2. For those of you who aren't familiar, there is an industry scale that ranges from 0 with no records found, all the way up to 7, which is a Patriot Act hit. And then all of the scores in between are varying degrees of severity with regards to criminal activity. So a cut score of 2 will encompass and allow misdemeanors, but it will not allow felonies per the policy. More than 31% of all owners have seen theft-related incidents in the last 12 months. 30% have seen drug abuse, and 7% have had on-site violence. Again, for a full report, please go to DISA.com/owner2020. The next section I'd like to cover is the DISA Contractors Consortium. This is something that I've affectionately called DISA's secret sauce. When you rewind to the early 90s, there was a challenge with regards to the drug testing industry and that there weren't standards. Department of Transportation had just recently come into light, and so you were seeing federally regulated programs that basically set a standard, but most people were focused on that from a DOT or Department of Transportation standpoint. And so the challenge for non-DOT or non-regulated facilities, like refineries as an example, was that every site had different requirements. Every contractor company potentially was performing different policies, different testing in order to comply with completing a drug test. And this created a lot of challenges with regards to the effectiveness of the program and the transparency of the program. The biggest issue is illicit substance abuse. Furthermore, if you're not tracking individuals who may have tested positive and violated the policy, you open yourself up to employee job hopping, where an individual may switch employers or simply switch owner sites to go to work. I mentioned the non-standardization, so the challenge is who to test, when to test, why to test, and what drugs are you testing for. And then there was very limited audit capability. Again, this is pre-internet, so a lot of things were being done via a paper trail audit where certain information just wasn't readily available. So no employee tracking. And again, if you had 100 contractor companies coming on site, you ran the risk of having 100 different programs that weren't communicating with each other. So in 1992, DISA developed the DISA Contractors Consortium to combat the issues that I just mentioned. It focused on comprehensive, standardized testing with real-time tracking, both at the company level, but more importantly, that individual employee level. We now have nationwide consortium and owner acceptance across over 250 sites. DISA's total client count is north of 45,000 customers. And we are tracking millions of records within our database. Of those records, several million are in compliance and being tracked, and they're able to go on site and go from site to site to site. We've got over 100,000 though that are not in compliance, and again, being tracked and preventing them from getting on site prior to gaining the appropriate compliance with the policies. This program is portable and transferable. It's portable, meaning I can send my individual employee from one owner site to the next while knowing that that individual is in compliance, and more importantly, having the owner's ability to validate that that person's in compliance. It's also transferable, meaning that an employee can go from company A to company B. So again, this creates a mobile work-ready employee if that person is in compliance, and it prevents an individual from getting on site and presenting risk if they are not in compliance. The next section is focused on one of DISA's newest compliance solutions, DISA Compliance Monitoring. DISA Compliance Monitoring, or DCM for short, is a full-service third-party compliance monitoring system for owner-operators that are not in a DISA consortium. It's ideal when operators and contractors have had difficulty monitoring their contractors and subcontractors in-house. Maybe they've fallen under regulatory scrutiny of plans and data, and there's concerns of potential future audits, which lead to fines. And then operators and contractors that may need help in implementing a comprehensive contractor monitoring program. It enables the operator to ensure supervisor training has been conducted, confirm current roster of covered employees are on record, perform a spot check of employees that are on their site, and see the employee's last test performed, acknowledgement of receiving and reviewing the policy, and any previous employer drug and alcohol test checks per DOT regulations. Some key features: real-time access via web-based application. Again, putting the data at the fingertips of the owners to ensure that they are monitoring their own compliance successfully. The client monitoring can also push down to subcontractors. So there are contractors that are managing subcontractors, all funneling up to that owner-operator site, ensuring compliance. DCM supports regulatory audits. So again, the goal here is to ensure compliance with policies, oftentimes Department of Transportation regulated, ultimately leading to that safer and more secure workplace. The records are easy to access with various statistical data, drug and alcohol testing policies and plans, as well as the various training that may be provided to employees and supervisors, in addition to the covered list of employees that are in compliance and potentially on site. With regards to DISA compliance monitoring, it's focused on meeting your specific requirements, whether that be Department of Transportation agencies or your non-DOT client-specific policies and site access requirements. The next section focuses on COVID-19 and positivity rates. We're all familiar with the consequences of drug use in the workplace. Poor work quality, lack of focus, absenteeism, which all lead to productivity issues and potentially incidents and accidents in the workplace. The cost of drugs in the workplace is tremendous. Nationally, US companies lose approximately $100 billion a year due to drug and alcohol-related abuse. 40% of all industrial workplace fatalities are caused by substance abusers. On average, 10 to 20% of all work-related fatalities in the US test positive for drugs or alcohol. 17% of the average workforce in the US is made up of substance abusers. Each substance abuser costs their company an average of $7,000 per person per year. Now, this stat has been around for years, and it's focused nationally. DISA wanted to perform a white paper to identify with our clients being more safety and security focused if the cost increases. For safety sensitive industries, DISA believes that number is closer to $35,000 per person per year. Now, we're familiar with the opioid epidemic. Oddly enough, it has led to the rise in amphetamine use. Since 2018, amphetamines have resulted in more positive drug tests than cocaine or opiates. The chart below shows the percentage of all DISA positive tests by drug from 2017 to 2019. You can see on the far left, marijuana is relatively stable. Cocaine is down slightly. Opioids has increased slightly, and amphetamines has increased significantly from 2017 to 2019. Furthermore, COVID-19 has accelerated amphetamine and opioid use. This slide shows the number of positive random tests by drug April through September of the COVID months. You can see on the left, again, 2019 comparison in blue to 2020 in orange. There's a slight increase in marijuana, decrease in cocaine, similar to the previous slide, a 432% increase in opioid positive random tests between the months of April to September 2020 versus 2019, and a 226% increase in amphetamines, again, 2020 versus 2019. Now, it's not slowing down. The chart on the left shows opioid random positivity rates year over year. You can see April through September, the increase year over year is significant. On the right, with amphetamine random positivity rates, similar results, significant year over year increase. Now, there have been a number of studies conducted on a national crisis. So what we found, substance abuse trends fall in a national crisis, substance abuse increases. COVID is causing many people to experience stress, anxiety, and fear. After the terrorist attacks of 9/11, substance abuse increased, especially in New York. People self-medicated to deal with the symptoms of depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. The report also found that the increase in substance use persisted several months after 9/11. And again, we're still dealing with the effects of COVID. So we will see this for months, potentially even years. 30% of Manhattan residents say they drank more alcohol, smoked more cigarettes, and used more marijuana in the first month after 9/11. And that number only dropped slightly to 27% 6 months later. We've also seen this trend post-Vietnam, as well as Hurricane Katrina. Now, with regards to upcoming technology, a lot of the focus has been with regards to combating the challenges of marijuana, and more specifically, the legalization of marijuana. This is a slide showing a Gallup poll with regards to marijuana public opinion. In 1969, only 12% of adults supported the legalization of marijuana. Fast forward 50 years, and you're seeing 2/3 of American adults support the legalization. Now, this map speaks to that trend. This slide is affectionately known as the weed map by my marketing group, and you can see all of the states that have some form of legalization and or decriminalization. Only the states in gray have marijuana fully illegal. And every election season, we're seeing more and more states put more and more ballots up focused on the legalization and decriminalization of marijuana. One example is South Dakota voted to go from one of the harshest marijuana laws in the country to fully legalized. Marijuana facts and figures. From 2014 to 2018, a positive marijuana test for employees increased from 2.4% to 2.8% nationwide. That's a 16% increase. Post-recreational marijuana legalization, marijuana positive drug test results in the workplace increased 20% in Colorado and 23% in Washington state. These were the first two states to legalize marijuana years ago. And again, we've touched on some of the consequences and side effects, but they all speak to impairment, creating safety and security issues at the workplace. In the era of legalization, new marijuana testing is needed. Pre-legalization, we were essentially zero tolerance. You focused on the repercussions within the policy if an individual tested positive for marijuana. And all of the methodologies that we've traditionally used to test with, urinalysis, hair, oral fluid, and blood, have detection windows that exceed that recent usage and go into days, weeks, and even months. So new technology that is emerging is focused on breathalyzer, similar to alcohol test results. Only a breathalyzer balances that fairness with public safety and really focuses on that recent usage. And that recent usage speaks to the potential impairment, really that window within 2 to 3 hours. So with these new challenges for employers, the detection windows are key. Again, in states where it has not been fully legalized, or there are caveats with regards to medical marijuana, detection windows can go far beyond the recent usage state. With new technology emerging from Hound Labs and their marijuana breathalyzer, that window of 2 to 3 hours is critical for detection of potential impairment within recent usage. How it works? It's very simple. Similar to an alcohol breathalyzer, you attach the mouthpiece, you breathe into the device, and then ultimately you take the cartridge, put it into the analyzing machine for processing. This takes minutes, where at the end of it, you will receive a result identifying whether or not marijuana was present in that impairment window. I'd like to open it up to the group now for any questions that you may have with regards to the presentation and emerging technologies.
Colin, that was great information. Thank you so much for taking a couple minutes to share that with all of our attendees. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we dive into the Q&A. For anyone that wants a copy of the presentation, they can click on the materials section bottom right and download a copy of that right now. If they would like to ask a question based on the materials they want, please use the Q&A button at the bottom right. We're going to answer as many of those as we can before we wrap up today, but I know we have a little bit shorter of a session today, a little bit of a hard out at the end, so we'll dive straight into the question. Colin, how will the legalization of marijuana impact DISA's consortiums?
So the legalization of marijuana is absolutely a topic of conversation constantly. State by state, we've seen decriminalization, which has had less of an impact on employer screening policies. But when you see legalization, whether it's medical marijuana or recreational use, it does create policy questions. Now, from a DOT, Department of Transportation standpoint, these are federal regulations, and so state laws are superseded by Department of Transportation regulations. So marijuana testing is fully legal and fully required across DOT tests. Now, when it comes to non-DOT testing, state to state to state, I referenced Colorado and Washington as the two states that implemented recreational legalization first, and we do a lot of testing in those states. Bottom line, this is a drug that does create impairment, no different than alcohol. Alcohol is legal, creates impairment, and it is prohibited per the policy.
Colin, next question is how can we continue to enforce a drug program with legalized marijuana or medicinal marijuana cards in our state?
Certainly you want to make sure your policy accommodates for the language within that state. There are emerging challenges and emerging technologies to combat those challenges, like the marijuana breathalyzer example, looking at impairment. Again, with regards to site access, the focus is on making sure those individuals comply with the policy prior to accessing the facility. And to date, we have not seen marijuana removed from any policy nationwide.
Why are amphetamines rising so much?
Yeah, so, amphetamines are rising for several reasons, one of which is they're cheap and easy to get a hold of. We've been combating the opioid epidemic, and so much focus and education and enforcement has gone towards a very specific drug type. It's opened up the door for other drugs of abuse to reemerge. When you think about the late 90s and early 2000s, we saw amphetamine abuse just rise dramatically with the introduction of methamphetamines. And we're starting to see that reemergence again. Again, employers have to be diligent. They have to create awareness programs, training programs, and ultimately policies to deter and detect abuse of all forms of drugs.
Next question is, how is the DISA consortium different from what my contractors already have?
Sure. With regards to contractor company programs, these may be great programs. They may be testing for the same drugs and the same test purposes. The challenge is those programs don't communicate with each other. So the DISA Contractor Consortium creates that standardization, but really it creates that portability and transferability. That individual employee's status is following them from site to site to site and contractor company to contractor company. And through various individual programs, audit processes, you lose that communication in between contractor company 1 and contractor company 2.
Kind of a great 1-2 question here. Are there benefits to the contractors being in the DISA consortium?
I think first and foremost, it's safety. It's enhanced safety and security if you're part of this program, whether you're an employee, a contractor company, or that owner. From an employer standpoint, cost is a key factor when running a business, and this reduces redundant costs of testing. And it's creating a mobile, work-ready employee. If you keep your employees in compliance with these universally accepted policies, those individuals can go to work quicker and start generating revenue for you as the employer.
Next question, do contractors have to sign up per owner that they go on site for?
So the vast majority of owner programs are universally accepted. There may be variances when it comes to certain drug testing methodologies that may be required at one site versus another. There are also variances potentially with regards to background checks. But the vast majority of owners participating in this program are utilizing the same fundamental policies for drug testing and the same policies, products, and grading and evaluation scale for background checks, which means no, the individual employee and or contractor do not need to sign up per owner site. They can leverage one program or one set of programs to comply with all of their clients' needs.
Colin, just a couple more. If someone tests positive at another site, can I restrict them from my site?
Yes. So one of the biggest gaps that the DISA Contractors Consortium closes is employee job hopping due to that illicit substance abuse or positive test. And so because we're tracking at the individual employee level, regardless of where that worker goes, that status is following. So if you're an employer or an owner, you will have visibility to identify whether or not an individual is in compliance with the appropriate policies.
Is it possible to red light anyone who is tested positive at any other consortium to prevent them from coming onto my site?
That is a possibility. That is a functional differentiator that we have, where because we're managing multiple consortium policies, we are able to track statuses and provide a high-level status in the event that an owner wants to restrict access for anyone who has violated other policies.
Can I still test my full-time employees for marijuana?
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, we do testing in all 50 states, and like the weed map showed, the vast majority of them have legalized marijuana in some form or fashion. And so we have seen very few contractor companies remove that. We have seen no owners remove the marijuana requirement. You can absolutely continue to test. I would just say be sure to make sure you vetted your policy with any state-specific laws.
Are employers removing marijuana from their testing panel? Have you seen that?
No, this is not a common trend. Out of the 45,000 plus DISA clients, we have literally seen a handful that proactively removed it. Certainly all Department of Transportation clients are required to keep marijuana. All of our consortium clients have kept marijuana in place, and the vast majority of corporate policies have kept marijuana in place. Again, regardless of its legalization, this drug does have impairment issues that can create safety and security concerns within the workplace.
And Colin, real quick, last question, we'll try and sneak it in here. When will the marijuana breathalyzer be available?
Great question. So yeah, the Hound Labs marijuana breathalyzer, this is a product and a technology that we're very excited for. This is attacking a challenge that is being presented due to the legalization of marijuana. DISA sits on the advisory board for the Hound Labs marijuana breathalyzer. So we're working very closely with them, and we will be launching pilot programs towards the end of this year and beginning of 2021. And I fully expect the product to be commercially available to clients during the course of 2020.
Colin, thank you again so much. Real quick before we go, any last words?
I would just like to say thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate everyone's support. Day with DISA is an event designed to create a networking and feedback and educational forum. So again, thank you very much for your participation.
Awesome. And thank you again, Colin. Greatly appreciate you taking a couple of minutes to share your wisdom with our attendees. If anyone has any further questions, feel free to hit the chat button to talk directly with our representatives, or the Q&A button if you'd like to get some follow-up directly from one of the owner-operator team. Thank you.